Okay, welcome everyone. Today we have three meetings back to back. The first one being the Seneca County Industrial Development Agency, followed immediately after by the Seneca County Economic Development Corp., followed after that by the Seneca County Funding Corp. So we'll start out with the Seneca County IDA. First item is approval of the minutes from our last meeting, February 3rd. Does anyone have any corrections or changes to this? Hearing none. Have a voice vote on this. Do you have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No. Motion carried. Next on the agenda, the reason why we're a little later this month on the meeting is the approval of the IDA annual audit, single audit, and management letter. So Bob, if you could run through a brief summary of this.
Sure. Included in your packet is information regarding, summary information on the audit itself. I'd like to point out a few items. Number one is the opinion. The opinion is a clean opinion. That's the most important thing in the audit in its entirety is the opinion letter, which means there is no issues uncovered. The operating records are in good order. I also understand that there were no material adjustments made to our operating records to the final audit. That's also very encouraging. A few highlights, when we look at the total assets at the end of December 2021, they measured $4,526,000. That compares to $5,476,000 in 2020, a difference of $950,000. Most of that is due to the sale of the sewer line, or the final disposition of the unfortunately a loss position for us as well in the operating statement. The operating statement itself, operating revenues measured, let's see here, I gotta get this right. Operating income, I should say, was a negative $1,522,000. Again, that is due mainly to the sewer line transition. That compares to a minus $183,000 in 2020. Total non-operating income measured $59,000 compared to $112,000 in the previous year. The net change, which is really the bottom line for the year, was a negative $941,000 compared to a minus $70,000 in the previous year. Again, the biggest number change in that category, again, was due to the transition of the sewer line. When I look at the other item that needs to be at least mentioned was the single audit. And the single audit was performed. And again, we received a clean opinion. In that category as well, there were no management letter issues identified, which is also good. And from a standpoint of funding, cash position was $713,000. Our outstanding loan receivables, $437,000. Administrative cost allowance is $4,309. The subtotal of that number is $1,154,000. And the total revolving loan fund assistance for the year was $779,000. There were no compliance issues that were uncovered in the single audit. Again, that's a short summary of the audit and the single audit. Remembering also that the opinion was clean, no significant issues and management letter issues, and the operating records that were used, we found no significant adjustments. That, I think, is about as good as you can get. Although we wish the numbers were somewhat stronger, but those were certainly circumstantial issues as well.
Yes.
Yeah. Are there any questions?
Okay. Hearing none, could I have a motion to approve the annual audit, single audit management letter?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Kelly, roll call?
Mr. Brusso?
Yes.
Mr. Keim?
Yes.
Mr. Bruce Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Tom Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Shipley?
Yes.
Mr. Trout and Mrs. Strencione absent. Motion carried.
Next on the agenda is a review of the IDA long-term forecast. So Sarah?
All right, so as you all know, we review this twice a year, once with our annual audit time and once when we review our budget. So we have two different long-term scenarios for the IDA here. I'll start with the worst case, which is our known revenues against budgeted expenses. Obviously, you can see at the end of 2022, we project having just over $3 million in operating cash on hand, mostly because of significant agency fees that we're expecting from projects that were approved either last year or are currently in the process of moving through IDA approvals, the largest one being the Trilina Solar Project. Then going into the next few years, you will see that the Del Lago payments that we've received annually are projected to stop in 2025. Beyond that, the revenues that we continue to see that we know about currently are an agency fee that we collect annually from Scepter. So out until 2028, based on this worst case scenario, the IDA would have just north of $500,000 available cash on hand. Obviously not ideal, worst case scenario again here. Moving on to our second scenario, that's where we forecast $400,000 of income annually. That obviously paints a much nicer picture that shows us having just over $2 million in cash available as of 2028. And this does tend to be a very realistic picture for us based on historical financials and what we've, sort of seen moving through as far as projects. Any questions on the long-term forecast?
Could you give me an example of what an other operating revenue would be? What would that consist of, or just an example?
So
Is what I'm kind of looking at.
the other operating revenues, as we have in our budget, so for 2022, we show just over 110,000. Part of that is the annual revenue that we received from the county. Part of that would be like our property sales. So basically anything that isn't an agency fee from a project, which is why it's kind of inconsistent. Obviously, when we do show it in the $400,000 one, it's sort of broken out. You see the $56,000 annually. That's what we typically get from the county in any given year. And the reason it's not included in the worst case scenario is because that obviously has to be approved every year by the County Board of Supervisors, so that's not a guaranteed.
Right, thank you.
No problem. Other questions? Okay.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. Next item on the agenda is approval of the ABO measurement report.
So you all received a copy of this in your packets. We have to do this every year as part of our PAAA compliance. Nothing has really changed. It, just outlines essentially what the IDA is, what our mission is, who we serve. The only items that do change annually, as was pointed out in the briefing memo, are the private investment and job creation and retention information. So that's under the self-evaluation of prior year performance. Obviously that is based on the Paris reporting data that we collect every year from our active projects. Are there any questions about the ABO measurement report?
And everyone comfortable with the, in back of here, the governance certification? Okay. Any other discussion on this? If not, can I have a motion to approve the ABO measurement report?
So made.
Second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carried. Next item on the agenda is the conveyance of a portion of the Army Depot property to Deer Haven Park.
So I'm going to turn this one over to Pat, in honor of it being her last official board meeting and also in honor of all of her work on the depot. She is certainly best suited to explain the nature of this resolution, what is up for discussion here.
Okay, we received a deed from the Army early this year for 283 acres that were labeled retained sites. The sites the Army retained because they had to complete environmental cleanup. They were mostly ex-EOD sites that the Army soldiers used for EOD exercises. There were 9 sites. Five of the sites are located within Deer Haven Park, which counts to about 236 acres. And then there's 4 sites within the First Light property that's about 46 acres. When we did the PAAA notice back 3 years ago for transfer of the conservation area to Deer Haven Park, we included all of the acreage, including the retained sites plus the open detonation grounds that we haven't received yet, so that we only had to do the notice once. So since that's done, we're ready to transfer the 236 acres to Deer Haven. For the 45 acres, when we completed the PAAA notice for First Light back in 2006, we only included 50 acres of the 732 acres because that's all they're going to be using. So we're not in a position yet to convey the 45 acres. We're going to have to complete another PAAA notice as soon as we decide with First Light exactly how much of the additional acreage they want at this time. So right now, we'll just we've accepted the deed, and now we will transfer the 236 acres to Deer Haven Park.
Okay. And the Army still holds some of the property back?
500 acres.
500 to go. And this is what property that no one will probably ever use.
Probably not.
It'll probably just be fenced off and,
Their anticipation will be completed in 2028.
Did that move out? Could that take a while further? 2020?
It was supposed to be completed in 2012, so every year depending on the budget, yeah.
that's not bad, really. Less than 2 decades. See, any questions or comments on this? Hearing none, I have a motion to approve the resolution for the conveyance of the parcels to Deer Haven.
So moved.
Second,
Seconded.
Kelly?
Mr. Brusso?
Yes.
Mr. Keim?
Yes.
Mr. Bruce Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Tom Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Shipley?
Yes.
Mr. Trout and Mrs. Strencione absent, motion carried.
Okay. Next item is the standing item update from the Seneca County Chamber of Commerce. Jeff?
So it's a busy time at the Chamber, particularly as it relates to our work with the tourism end of business. We are putting all of our programming together for the summer tourism season, the summer-fall tourism season. So we'll have another round of digital advertising. We're making continual updates to the county's tourism-facing website. There is a number of distribution contracts that we are finalizing right now in order to get our annual visitor guide produced and shipped to to the various outlets that we track. We are definitely experiencing cost increases from a year ago, everything from printing to distribution, printing particularly, which is a little unnerving. The contract or the price estimate from the printers is skyrocketed because of supply issues. So there are definitely concerns that the chamber faces when it comes to promoting tourism, but we are confident that this is going to be another very solid year for Seneca County in terms of the tourism end of things, the tourism economy. And on the chamber side, we're very happy to be bringing back in-person events. The first one is the Coffee and Conversation series, which is our breakfast educational series. And we're going to kick off a new round of those tomorrow, actually, Friday, with our county manager. So we're really looking forward to a nice discussion with our county manager and having our chamber community learn about some of the initiatives happening at Seneca County and certainly some of the things that we've been doing together with the IDA.
Sounds good. Thanks,
And
Jeff.
where will that be, Jeff?
It will be at the Health and Senior Services Center Auditorium, 8 o'clock, 8 to 9.
It's the old Bonneton building.
Old Bonnadette building, correct.
Next item is the standard standing item from the Seneca County Board of Supervisors. Don Trout isn't here, but either Mitch or Sarah, is there anything any highlights that you want to share with the board?
Mitch, do you have anything?
No, I don't.
No.
Thanks.
Okay. Then I guess we'll move on.
Then, under next item is the quarterly report. So, Sarah?
So you all received a copy of this in your packets. It covers sort of our standard update, where we stand year to date so far on our business retention and expansion visit goals, and our project wins for the year. Obviously, no project wins to report as of yet, but we do have a strong pipeline. We've got 25 projects right now that we are actively keeping track of. Much better position than we were in last January. I think that's almost double what we had in our pipeline last January. We've done 9 business retention and expansion visits year to date. So we're just about a fifth of the way to our year-end goal, obviously a little bit behind where we'd like to be as of the first quarter of the year. That's largely due to the fact that I have been, sort of on maternity leave for, the last 3 months. So that is expected to ramp up again, and I expect that we'll be able to hit our goal by the end of the year there. But I really wanted to take some time to talk about some sort of key things that have been in the news lately at the state and federal level, and locally as well. So a couple of programs that we're keeping our eye on. These are not necessarily officially approved or funded, but look quite promising. Governor Hochul has included $200 million in her state budget for FAST New York grant program. As you all know, the government loves their acronyms, but essentially it's to support the development of shovel-ready sites, to attract high-tech manufacturing, warehousing, distribution, and logistics businesses. So these grants would, if approved, be through Empire State Development, and we would certainly be, applying for one of these to support the industrial park project that we've been working on. Key thing to note with this, and then actually the next program, is that historically there has been a lot of support for projects that have a business already on the hook to come and develop, but there haven't been as many grant programs or other incentives to help with more general development of shovel-ready sites that you can actually begin to attract people. And with everything that's happened with COVID and supply chain issues, the government has, come to realize that it's important that we have the sites ready so that we can move quickly and actually go out and try to bring companies here. So that's very positive. The federal program that's being proposed is called the Onshore Act. Again, very similar to what New York State is proposing. This would be $100 million per year for 5 years, and the grants would be through the Economic Development Administration, which is where we were able to capitalize a revolving loan fund through. Other key highlights, things to be aware of: Keystone Mills, obviously that project for their conventional grain mill expansion made it through final IDA approval last fall. They are currently working with NYSEG right now because it's come to our attention and theirs that the electrical substation in Fayette does not have the capacity to serve their expansion. So they are in the process of doing some studies and trying to get NYSEG's commitment for service so that they can make that expansion happen. We're doing everything we can to help facilitate that relationship so that we don't risk losing the project entirely. Other than that, you all have probably seen the news by now that ITT Goulds has announced that they plan to close the foundry over the next 2 to 3 years. This is something, obviously, that they've tried to do in the past, and there have been workarounds. We are looking to see, whatever we can do to either, prevent that from happening or to find a way to help transition the 50 or so people that currently work in the foundry into other roles at ITT. So more to come on that. Some good news locally. Del Lago announced that Churchill Downs has acquired Peninsula Pacific Entertainment. So, great to have a renowned name like Churchill Downs in the community. They don't expect anything to change as far as daily operations here locally, but they will be approaching the IDA board for approvals in order to transfer their pilot and other incentives to the new ownership. So keep an eye out for that over the next few months. And then the last 2 items, so the IDA and the County Board of Supervisors have a joint interview committee formed to find and select 2 candidates to fill our open board positions. We are working on scheduling interviews for this coming week. And then the last thing, we've put together a job description for what we're calling a grants and development specialist, essentially somebody to replace Pat, although nobody can truly replace Pat. But we will have more to come on that. The job description will be going to the governance committee for review and comment, and then we will begin open advertising for the position and interviews. And depending on timing, we'll come to the full IDA board for approval when we have somebody to recommend to hire. Ideally, we would like to be able to do a special board meeting in April, but it's looking with the timeline more likely that it'll be probably May. So that's it. A lot of updates. Any questions?
Where's the Trilina process? I know that's a pretty significant piece of the next sort of year at least or more. Is there any news, or is it just a matter of the wheels turning to the point when they turn finally?
So Rob, do you want to maybe speak to that?
Yeah, they got their, I forget the exact terminology, but their certificate of need from the state commission, so that part of it's done. The last I spoke with their council, they had decided to delay closing on the IDA side of it into this fiscal year. So at some point in time, they'll be coming back to us and telling us they're ready to proceed with the IDA piece. There's a lot of moving parts to it. I don't forget exactly how many parcels are involved, but they have lease options on 50 or 60 different parcels to kind of put this thing all together. So I think that's what they're in the process now, trying to figure out, logistically how that's going to work. And then once they do, they'll come back to us and hopefully tell us they're ready to close. So.
It is a done deal, or it doesn't, not exactly.
Well, we haven't closed on the IDA assistance yet.
Sure.
So yeah, but they do have the, this isn't my site permitting for solar projects like this isn't my bailiwick, but the major regulatory hurdle was getting the certificate of need from the state commission, and that's happened. So I obviously can't speak for them, but I would assume, given the resources that have gone into it at this point, it's a done deal. It's just a matter of pulling all the pieces together.
Thanks.
Other questions? Okay,
Any other business for today?
no?
No? Executive session?
Nope.
No? So next, could I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second that.
All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? No? Motion carried. So we're done with the IDA portion of today's set of 3 different meetings. Next, we'll be going into the Seneca County Economic Development Corporation part. Starting with that first item, we have the meeting minutes from February 3rd. Yes, EDC is between Tom Keim, Jeff Shipley, and myself. So any questions, comments, or changes on the meeting minutes? Hearing none, can we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
It's an easy one. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? No. Motion carried. Bob, next item is similar to the IGA. We had the audit for the EDC.
Similar to the IDA audit, the EDC received a clean opinion. They always look at that as being the most important factor. I also indicate that there were no significant material adjustments made to the operating records. Important development that did take place in 2021 was the transfer of the cemetery from the EDC to the county. That did have a major impact on the financial position of the organization as well. We ended the year with assets which measured $163,000. That was all cash. We had no liabilities at year end. And the net equity was again 163, which matches the asset base. On the revenue side, total revenues, this is on a consolidated basis again, was $7,874. Total expenses, $80,519. And the net change in assets was a minus $72,000, which is the difference between those two numbers. Our equity position at the end of 2020 was $236,000. Equity position at the end of 2021 was $163,000. And the net difference again is $72,000, which is the net change in assets for the period. I did mention earlier that the management letter, again, was a clean management letter with no issues. And they did indicate that the weaknesses that were identified in the prior year have been resolved. That's a quick review.
Okay.
Any questions?
No. Hearing none, could I have a motion to approve the audit and management letter?
So made.
Second?
Second.
Kelly, roll call?
Mr. Brusso?
Yes.
Mr. Keim?
Yes.
Mr. Shipley?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Next item is approval of the ABO measurement report.
So very similar to the IDA except for the EDC. So this, again, touches on our mission statement, our beneficiaries, and the self-evaluation. This one discusses the fact that, we were managing the cemetery through June and then the operations were transferred. Again, it's a PAAA compliance matter. Any questions?
No? So, hearing no additional questions or comments, can I have a motion to approve the ABO measurement report?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
So voice vote, all in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? No, motion carried. Next, sir, is the review of the EDC long-term forecast.
Okay, this one, we only project the worst-case scenario, so our known revenues only against budgeted expenses. 2022, you will see $600,000 in loans receivable on the revenue side, and then loan expense, the same loan expense on the grant side. That is our OCR pass-through grant to Seneca Dairy Systems for their galvanizing facility and equipment. So really, the operating cash that we expect to have available at the end of 2022 is approximately $136,000. And then we have no projected revenue for the next 3 years, so we've done this out until 2025. We do have obviously ongoing professional fees, mostly associated with the annual audit, which drain a fair amount of EDC funds. So based on this scenario, which in this case, worst case, is also most realistic case, we would expect to have about $52,000 in cash on hand as of the end of 2025. So something that we've discussed. We obviously need to determine the future of the EDC. We do have obligations to finish out the reporting related to the OCR grant, but other than that, we have no sort of annual reporting or anything that has to be done for ongoing projects beyond that point. So.
And yeah, something we'll need to seriously address. Yeah, at this point, by the time 2027 hits, will be negative, so you'd hate to lose the the $136,000 just gone to audit fees over the next 5 years.
Yeah, so what we've, discussed obviously in conjunction with the IDA Industrial Park project is potentially using EDC funds to support that, and then going through one more annual audit and then, potentially dismantling the EDC. But certainly we can also evaluate options to see if, we should be making efforts to bring in more revenue and, push for more activity. It does seem like for most of the demand we have, the IDA is able to service that, which is partially why the EDC has been so quiet for the past few years.
Okay. Any other business?
None?
No other business, no need for executive session. So, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Made.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? So the Seneca County EDC portion of the meeting is over. Last part is the Seneca County Funding Corporation. First item, Seneca County Funding Corporation now is just Bob Kern and myself. First order of business is a approval of the meeting minutes from November 4th of 2021. Bob, any comments or changes to the meeting minutes?
Not at this point.
So could I have a motion to approve? I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So motion carried. Next item is we have another audit management letter.
As I mentioned earlier with the IDA audit, a single audit was performed with a clean opinion as well. There were no issues identified in internal controls for the audit. I did mention some numbers earlier. As a quick review, as far as the type of audit, it was an unmodified audit with a clean opinion. Internal control or financial reporting, material weaknesses identified, none. Sufficient deficiencies identified, none. Non-compliance material to financial statements noted, none. I did indicate earlier the total expenditures of federal awards for the year was $779,000. The revolving loan fund consists of cash of $713,000, outstanding loans receivable of $437,000, administrative cost allowance of $4,309. The subtotal of that number is $1,554,000. The sum of EDA dollar totals is at a ratio of 0.67%. The total revolving loan fund assistance is $779,000. That's a quick overview. Again, no issues, clean opinion.
So therefore, no other questions. Have a motion to approve the audit and management letter? Oh, Bob?
So moved.
Yep. I'll second. Kelly?
Mr. Brusso?
Yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes.
Motion carried.
And last item we have is the same ABO measurement report.
Yep, so again, pretty much the same thing as the IDA and EDC. It's PAAA compliance for the funding corp. You know, the self-evaluation for the prior year, no bonds were issued. There hasn't been any substantial activity in the funding corp.
So, and yeah, there's no long-term forecast, although it's similar to the EDC, where
Better position than the EDC.
better, we have probably 10 years,
Yeah, a lot less
but
expenses every year. The audit is a much smaller chunk and a lot more funds available, so it could go for a longer period of time. But again, is it really worth having it around? We do need to keep the funding corp for a few years because of reporting on our bonds that we do have. But aside from that, you know, more could potentially be done with those funds. And again, the question of possibly using some for an industrial park has been discussed.
and there's, no other business, no need for an executive session today.
We do need a voice vote on the
Oh,
ABO report.
So, yes, motion to approve the ABO measurement report.
So moved.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? No. Motion carried. So motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second. All in favor? Aye. So we're done. So all done with all three meetings.